There's an intriguing aspect to the bonds we form with others. Throughout our days, we assume that our nearest and dearest, the ones we cherish, the ones we rely on, truly prioritize our happiness. Maybe they genuinely do, or maybe we've mixed up their desires with our own fulfillment. Maybe we've grown so used to agreeing that we've lost touch with the power of refusal. And that's how we keep agreeing, overextending ourselves, spreading ourselves too thin until eventually we gaze into the mirror and question our own disappearance. When exactly did we turn into someone who exists solely for everyone else? I'd like you to pause and reflect for a second. If you sat in true silence and pondered, when was the last time I acted just for my own sake? What would you recall? Was it recent, last week, last month, last year? Or would a hint of regret reveal that it's all a blur? Because at some point, music, you let your own value fade from view. You turned into a tool, a fix, a set of hands mending others' messes. No one checked if you were worn out. No one considered if you craved a break. They just figured you'd always show up, primed to offer, to assist, to give up your own needs. That's our focus today. Not life's dramatic blows, but the subtle, silent drains, the requests that erode your calm, sap your vitality, and leave you puzzled by the void inside. Because music, it's rarely blatant. They don't arrive with a warning label like, quote 101. Instead, they arrive with emotions, music with manipulation, with lines such as, quote 2, or quote 3, or quote 4. And suddenly, you're shouldering a burden that was never yours to bear. Allow me to outline 5 requests you'll encounter. 5 that seem fair at first glance but couldn't be further from it. And crucially, why distancing yourself from those who demand these music could be your smartest choice yet. The initial ask often involves taking on their duties as though they belong to you. Have you spotted this habit? A loved one, maybe a child, a relative, approaches with an issue, their personal issue. They frame it so it instantly turns into your crisis. They'll say, "Ichatu quote ba 5, or hatu quote 6 eta or tats quote 7. And since you care deeply, since you aim to support, you dive right in. You provide guidance, you hand over cash, you donate your hours, and what starts as a one-off aid evolves into an ongoing obligation. Soon enough, you're beyond assisting. You're handling it all. You're dialing their calls. You're footing their expenses. You're parenting their kids while they chase their own adventures. Music. And if you gently propose that they might manage parts of this on their own, you face disbelief, wounded reactions, claims that you're self-centered or indifferent. Music. How could you pull back your aid? Haven't they always depended on you? Let me pose this. When did their failure to navigate their world turn into your endless punishment? That's the reality, right? You forgo your downtime, your ease, your aspirations, just so they can keep dodging the duties they should have tackled ages ago. Music their own accountability. Picture it this way. You're hiking a trail with your own pack. It's burdensome on its own, packed with your concerns, your goals, your essentials. Then, along comes someone. Mind holding mine for a bit? And out of goodwill, you agree. But soon another joins, music, then more, and suddenly you're doubled over from the load of all their gear while they stroll lightly ahead, unburdened, assuming you'll match their pace. This isn't support, it's manipulation, masquerading as affection. And the harshest truth? The more you deliver, the more they demand. They overlook your strain, music, amid their carefree strides, and when you finally buckle under the fatigue, they won't lift you. They'll just be confused or irritated that you can't keep enabling them. You're not a crutch for grown-ups who won't stand on their own. You're not an endless cushion for those who leap from edges, counting on you to break their fall. That moment is here. Question, music, why you're still in this pattern. Is it authentic care or anxiety? Anxiety over seeming inconsiderate, anxiety over rejection, anxiety over drawing a line and seeing them leave. But what they omit is this. Those who depart when you enforce limits are precisely the ones who were never fully present for you anyway. They stuck around for your contributions. And the instant you cease delivering, music, once a relationship reaches that breaking point, it reveals its real essence right there. Let me spell it out plainly. If anybody expects you to shoulder what they ought to handle on their own, music, if they dump their issues onto you, if they hold you accountable for their joy, music, their money matters, their decisions, you've got full permission to turn them down flat. Not perhaps or let's discuss. Just no. Because your existence isn't a salvage operation for folks too lazy to rescue themselves. The next common request? Asking to borrow cash with zero plans to give it back. This one's tricky, music, right? Cash and connections don't blend well. They clash like fire and ice. A close person comes to you in a bind. They require funds, not a huge sum they claim, merely enough to scrape through, to handle that invoice or this sudden crisis or that isolated incident. And they swear up and down. Payback next payday, next pay cycle, the instant life improves. So you hand it over, aiming to assist, trusting their word, figuring that in their spot you'd crave the same support. Initially, it warms you. You've fixed their dilemma. You've played the savior. You've shown your affection. But here's the twist, or more accurately, the absence of action. The funds never return, and when you softly bring it up, they seem wounded. They highlight their hardships. They imply you're callous for mentioning it, or they vow once more, any day now, and you trust it again because you yearn to. Time drags on, weeks, months, even years, and that cash you provided slips away forever. Yet the real damage isn't the lost bucks, it's the strain on your bond. Now, awkwardness lingers, bitterness builds, music. Each encounter reminds you of their debt, they sense your unspoken grudge. Rather than tackle it openly, they dodge you, pretend all's fine, or hit you up for extra. Allow me to explain the truth behind it. When folks seek a loan without intending repayment, it's not borrowing, it's swiping. And they bank on your aversion to fights to escape consequences. They realize haggling over cash, music seems tacky, petty, like prioritizing cash over caring. So they twist your principles, your open-handedness, your warmth, your aversion to discomfort right back at you. But consider this. If they cherished the connection, would they jeopardize it for your dough? If they honored you, would they commit to things they never planned to deliver? Absolutely not. What they're truly music signaling is that their short-term ease trumps your fiscal stability. Their desires eclipse your essentials. You're basically an ATM they tap endlessly, music, without ever replenishing. And the harsh reality, handing out loans seldom resolves the core issue. If they're drowning in money woes, your handout is merely a temporary fix. It might tide them over this period's mess, but it ignores the habits that sparked it. Music. The following cycle brings fresh chaos, fresh pleas, fresh demands. And having given once, they'll view you as a soft touch, a steady well, a pushover who won't refuse. Some might wonder, okay, but what about a true crisis? What if they really require aid? I'd counter that aiding in a pinch differs from fueling a habit. Authentic crises are uncommon. Think the surprise hospital costs, the vehicle failing right when it's vital for their job. Music, the sudden job loss beyond their control. And even in those cases, someone with principles will bend over backward to settle up. They'll devise a schedule. They'll chip away with steady contributions, no matter how modest. But if they're knocking on your door routinely, if their routine is endless disasters, if they perpetually crave quote 11 to survive, music, it's not misfortune at play, it's flawed decisions, and your wallet can't cure that. It merely delays the reckoning where they confront their ways and music alter them. So how do you respond? You safeguard your interests. You see that offering funds to non-repayers isn't kindness. Music, it's naivety. You've toiled too fiercely, given up too much to let your nest egg vanish into another's endless void. Your economic stability isn't up for debate. Your calm isn't on the market. Music. And anybody pushing you to gamble either isn't prioritizing your welfare. Music, they're fixated solely on their gain. If a help is truly required, alternatives exist. You might share guidance. You could assist in crafting a spending plan. You could direct them to our resources might seem like a lifeline, but giving away cash, particularly large sums, and without a solid plan for getting it back is just inviting disaster. And right now in your journey, the very last thing you want is more chaos. The next request you'll hear is for you to pick sides in disputes that don't involve you at all. This one's sneakily dangerous because it hides behind the guise of faithfulness. A loved one is clashing with another person you care about. It could be your kids bickering among themselves, or a rivalry between siblings, or some sprawling family squabble. Before you know it, you're dragged right into the middle. They approach you, one faction at a time, laying out their argument, spelling out why they're in the right and the other side is dead wrong. Then it hits. The loaded question, the snare. Which team are you rooting for? What a rotten spot to find yourself in. The instant you decide, you're the loser. Back one person and you push away the other. Attempt to remain impartial and both complain you're indifferent. Or if you step in to broker harmony music, you usually wind up catching flack from everybody once the truce falls apart. Let me break down what's really going on. These folks aren't seeking your insight or support. They want you to back up their stance. They need you to affirm they're the wronged party, that their anger is fair, that the blame all falls on the opponent. Music. By drawing you into the fray, they're rallying troops, collecting allies, aiming to triumph not by truth, but by stacking the numbers in their favor. But pause and reflect on this. What do you stand to win by jumping in? Sure, if you pull off a short-term resolution and foster some calm, what's the lasting win? Folks genuinely eager to sort out their issues will do so regardless of your input. Those not prepared will just clash again, likely over some minor nonsense, and they'll expect you, on the sidelines, to step up once more. In the process, though, what do you sacrifice? Your serenity, your impartiality, your freedom to cherish everyone involved without strings. Once you've picked a favorite, once you've declared one correct and the other mistaken, you've sparked a rift that could linger forever. Going forward, every encounter will bear the weight of that decision. Family get-togethers will simmer with unease. Calls will demand tiptoeing around sensitivities. And all for music. What? To patch up an issue that's not your burden. To umpire a brawl among adults who ought to manage their own spats without you. Music. That's far from sage advice. It's signing up for pointless pain. There's a classic proverb. When two are locked in battle, the outsider who meddles catches blows from both. Spot on, because regardless of your best efforts at balance, no matter how hard you strive to understand every angle, sooner or later each side will sense you shortchange them. They'll fixate not on your efforts, but on what you held back. Your prize for meddling? Bitterness aimed your way from every corner. So how do you handle it? Straightforward. Stay out. When somebody vents their complaints to you, lend an ear. Validate their emotions, sure, but refuse to align. Don't turn into their defender. Don't shuttle notes between feuding groups like an emotional courier. Respond gently, yet resolutely. Quote 12. Will they appreciate this? Likely not. They might resist. They could try to manipulate with guilt. They might claim true affection means backing them up, but stand firm. What you're truly offering is honor to all parties. You're honoring their capacity to tackle their own messes. You're safeguarding the connections by avoiding resentment's toxin. And above all, you're honoring your own worth by declining to serve as ammo in another's battle. At this point in life, your role isn't to mend every fractured tie in the clan. Your role is to guard your inner calm, to care deeply without getting snared in the theatrics, to offer presence without immersion. That calls for limits. The straightforward, steadfast, affectionate limits that declare, I value you, but I'm not getting drawn in. The fifth request you'll face is for you to alter your essence to suit their comfort. Now, this gets truly compelling, music, since it arrives in various guises. At times it's blunt, at others it's sly, but the core message never shifts. You're overwhelming or insufficient, misguided or passé or mortifying. Music, and in their boundless insight, they know precisely how you ought to act. Perhaps it's your wardrobe. They claim you look too dated or too youthful, or music too flashy or too drab. Or your beliefs. They urge you to quit voicing specific topics, drop particular stances, quit being so rigid. Or your pastimes. They figure what others deem trivial, dull, or unworthy of your time might actually bring you joy. Or it could run deeper. They might push you to overhaul your whole way of living, relocate to a new place, adopt a different routine, or alter your very essence. And what stings the most? These pleas often come from those who profess to care deeply about you, not random outsiders judging from afar, but relatives, trusted companions, folks whose views hold weight with you. They cloak their urges in the guise of worry, insisting they're only looking out for your well-being, claiming that tweaking just this aspect would improve everything. But consider this. Improved in whose eyes? When folks urge you to alter a core part of your being, it's rarely about your fulfillment. It's centered on their own ease. They feel uneasy around the real you. They feel ashamed in your presence, or they've got this preconceived notion of your ideal self, and you don't fit the mold. Instead of embracing you fully, they'd prefer to mold you into a version that suits their needs better. Reflect on their true intent. They're urging you to play pretend, to don a facade, to conceal the traits that set you apart. They're pushing you to swap your genuine self for their nod of approval. And that's no equitable exchange, not by a long shot. After all, who would you be stripped of your oddities, your tastes, the passions that spark your spirit and define your identity? Here's the intriguing part. Those pressing for your transformation are frequently the least evolved themselves. They haven't scrutinized their own paths. They haven't challenged their ingrained beliefs. They just drift along with the masses, fulfilling societal norms, then expect you to toe the line too. And when you push back, affirming your true nature, they take offense. But by now, you've gained the wisdom they seem to lack. Others' judgments are merely that, judgments, not truths, not mandates, not essentials, just fleeting ideas in another person's mind about your ideal existence. You're in no way bound to shape your life around their whims. That said, I'm not advocating stagnation. Personal development is enriching. Acquiring knowledge is vital. Yet there's a profound gap between evolving for your own advancement and morphing to appease someone else's intolerance. The first arises from your inner drive, the second from apprehension. The first broadens your horizons, the latter contracts them. So next time somebody implies you ought to shift gears, take a moment. Probe your thoughts. Does this stem from true self-improvement or from their unease? Will this advice truly aid you? Or is it a bid for you to diminish yourself so they can feel superior? If it's the second, and they're essentially saying, tone down your authenticity for my sake, your response should be a firm no. Not a hesitant maybe, not a vague, I'll mull it over. Just no. Because the reality is, they don't get it. You've secured your license to be unapologetically you. Through countless seasons, encounters, and hardships, you've discovered your core. You've served your time. Music. You've absorbed the hard-won insights. And if others can't handle that raw version of you, if your genuineness overwhelms them, it reveals all you need about the bond. It shows they cherish a fantasy of you far more than the flesh and blood individual. And that isn't authentic affection, music. That falls short of true camaraderie. That's merely a bargain where you act the part and they grant validation, and you're beyond such charades at this stage. So dress in ways that uplift your mood. Tune into tunes that resonate with your essence. Cling to the convictions honed over a lifetime of existence. Remain precisely as you are, and allow those who can't embrace it to vent their critiques elsewhere, since you haven't journeyed this far only to retreat into shadows. Now, the fifth demand folks make is that you forfeit your tranquility to ease their burdens. This might be the slyest imposition, as it rarely surfaces as an outright plea. Rather, it sneaks in through presumptions, unspoken standards, or subtle emotional leverage masquerading as closeness. Picture it. A person close to you is discontent, perhaps grappling with decisions they've made, perhaps entangled in a mess of their own creation. Music, or simply adrift in general malaise. Instead of confronting their turmoil head-on, they offload it onto you, expecting you to mend it, to shoulder it, to adopt it as your own issue. They ring you endlessly, craving conversation. They drop by without warning, seeking solace. They rely on you for emotional support, monetary aid, day-to-day help until you're doubled over from the load. And should you attempt to carve out boundaries or breathing room, they lash out with accusations of callousness. How could you be so distant? Do you even give a damn? Don't you cherish me? What they're conveying beneath it all is, my feelings outweigh yours, my requirements eclipse your calm. You ought to surrender your inner quiet to spare me from facing my own unease. And that's hardly a just arrangement. That's an unreasonable demand. It's outright emotional control. Let me make this crystal clear. You can't shoulder someone else's feelings without getting overwhelmed by them. You can't mend their inner turmoil. You can't shower them with enough affection, aid, or self-denial to fill their voids. That profound inner journey toward serenity and satisfaction, that's on them, not you. Yet plenty of folks, particularly those who have dedicated years to nurturing others, stumble into this pitfall. They believe true affection demands perpetual readiness. They see compassion as the inability to utter no. They imagine that with enough effort, generosity, and forfeiture, music, they can shield the other from their suffering. But reality doesn't bend that way. What you're actually doing is signaling that they get a free pass on owning their emotional world. You turn into their prop, their go-to emotional lifeline. The heavier your support, the more they rely, until you're both tumbling over. So, what must change? Safeguard your tranquility as if it's your greatest treasure, because it truly is. That mental ease, that quiet composure, the freedom to greet the morning free of fear, to navigate your hours without relentless worry. That's not some extravagance, that's the essence of living. And anyone demanding you surrender it for their benefit is overreaching. This isn't about halting your empathy. It doesn't call for turning icy or remote. It means cherishing others while holding on to your core self. Music. It means bolstering them without sinking into their issues. It means showing concern without hauling loads they ought to manage alone. And when they resist, when they label you self-centered or indifferent, hold your ground because you grasp the reality. Prioritizing your well-being isn't selfishness, it's essential. And those who genuinely value you will wish that calm for you, not demand you forfeit it. Music. So that's the rundown. 5 requests from others that you absolutely must turn down, hauling their duties, handing over cash you'll never recover, picking factions in their disputes, altering your true nature, yielding your serenity for their ease. And if you're pondering the practical side, how to utter Ichatkurs, quote 17, after years of constant, quote 18, here's the key. Deliver it with kindness, but deliver it decisively. Music, skip the endless rationales, avoid the defenses, forgo the haggling, just declare your limit clearly, and then enforce it. Because here's the truth they often withhold. Those who honor you will honor your lines. They may chafe at them, they may feel let down, but they'll acknowledge them. And those who disregard your lines, they've just revealed their true colors, and that's priceless insight. You've been around long enough to realize life's brevity. That moments are irreplaceable, that tranquility, once eroded, is tough to restore. So defend it fiercely, shield it vigilantly. Deny any plea to trade it to anyone, regardless of how desperately they insist they require it. Your existence is yours alone, not beholden to their hopes, not subject to their pressures, not bent to their solace, music, but yours. And the boldest act you can take for yourself is to embrace it fully on your own conditions.